Hello and welcome to Indus News live from our studios in Lahore. I am Muneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the top stories first. China has opposed India's unilateral annexation of occupied Kashmir and has told New Delhi to avoid provocation. The message was delivered by Foreign Minister Wang Yi and Vice President Wang Qishan in separate meetings with India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar. They told Jaishankar India's steps could trigger regional tension and called for the dispute to be resolved through existing UN resolutions. Iran says the UK might soon free its oil tanker, the Grace 1, after both sides exchanged documents regarding the ship's release. The Iran Sport Ministry says the tanker was captured and falsely accused of smuggling oil to Syria. In Syria, government forces have captured 6 towns and several villages in northern Hama and south of Idlib province. War monitors say over 250 people have died in the fighting since the ceasefire collapsed on Saturday. In Libya, clashes between government troops and Khalifa Haftar's forces have resumed following a 2-day ceasefire on Eid al-Adha. An official said Haftar's forces carried out airstrikes against the internationally recognized government of Libya in the outskirts of Tripoli. Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson says the most important trade deal his country needs to strike is with the European Union. In an interview, Johnson said a trade agreement with the US will be tough, but it will open up business opportunities. The United States has said it will support the United Kingdom with a free trade deal after Brexit. Russia's Maria Sharapova has defeated America's Alison Riske 2-0 in the first round of the Cincinnati Open. It's Sharapova's first victory at the tournament in 5 years. She will now face top seed Ashley Barty in the second round. These were the top stories. News in detail coming up after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back now for the news in detail, beginning from occupied Kashmir, where China has opposed India's unilateral annexation of occupied Kashmir and has told New Delhi to avoid provocation. The message was delivered by Foreign Minister Wang Yi and Vice President Wang Qishan in separate meetings with India's Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar. The Indian Foreign Minister is on a 3-day visit to China to get Beijing's support for its annexation of occupied Kashmir. The Chinese counterpart told Jaishankar India's steps can trigger regional tensions and urged the issue be resolved under UN resolutions. The Chinese leadership says it is concerned about the current situation and is closely following developments. Beijing has also said it opposes any unilateral action that changes the status quo in the Kashmir region. Now, after imposing a communications blackout in occupied Kashmir, the Indian government will now silence voices on social media. New Delhi has asked microblogging website Twitter to ban over half a dozen accounts for sharing Kashmir news. The Indian government has locked the valley under a crushing curfew after illegally revoking its status as a disputed territory. The BJP government has already imposed curbs on electronic and print media. The valley is under complete lockdown for a 9th day as Indian occupation forces fear strong protests after revocation of Article 370. Meanwhile, the international media has slammed India's crushing clampdown on occupied Kashmir during the religious festival of Eid al-Azha. Kashmiris spent the festive day in a state of house arrest as no celebrations were allowed. The New York Times described the situation in Kashmir as a living hell of fear. British newspaper The Guardian reported Eid in Kashmir was muted because India refused to allow any prayer congregation in the valley. The BBC reported Eid al-Azha in occupied Kashmir was marked amid a complete lockdown. Meanwhile, Canadian newspaper The Toronto Star says India is on a dangerous path in occupied Kashmir. Turkey's leading media outlet TRT said residents of the valley were unable to make the traditional sacrifice on Eid due to restrictions. Al Jazeera said the occupied valley remained cut off from the world during Eid because of the communications blackout. The Independent reported major mosques in Kashmir remain closed as India's security shutdown continues. Iran says the United Kingdom might soon free its oil tanker Grace 1 after both sides exchanged documents regarding ship's release. The Iran's port ministry says the tanker was captured on the false pretext of smuggling oil to Syria. Iran's port minister Jalil Islami says Tehran hopes the release will happen soon after the paperwork is complete. Gibraltar says it is seeking to de-escalate rising tensions with Iran since the detention of the Grace 1. It says the current detention order on the vessel expires on Saturday night. Earlier, Iran's Revolutionary Guard seized a British tanker, Stena Impero, 2 weeks after the capture of Grace 1, accusing it of maritime violations. Meanwhile, Tehran is still holding that tanker. Now, Iraq has rejected any Israeli participation in the U.S. naval coalition protecting shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. is rallying an international naval alliance to guard vessels in the Gulf after tensions with Iran escalated. Iraq's Foreign Minister Mohammad Ali al-Hakim says the Gulf states can secure the passage of ships together. He says Iraq will work to lower tensions in the region through talks because the presence of Western forces will increase conflict. Meanwhile, British warships HMS Kent set sail for the Gulf yesterday to join the US-led tanker escort mission. Germany has refused to join the Pentagon's coalition, saying it will fuel tensions, while Japan has expressed reservations over the move. In an interview, Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif called the US coalition a threat to regional security. Moving on now, in Syria, government forces have taken control of 6 towns and several villages in northern Hama and south of Idlib province. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says over 250 people have died in fighting since the ceasefire collapsed on Saturday. The War Monitor says the rebels have lost Al-Arbain, Al-Zakar and Al-Sakhar, among other areas in Hama province. It says the government forces have seized the hill of Sukhaik, an important vantage point in southern Idlib, as they move on Khan Shaykhun. Meanwhile, Russia says militants attacked 30 Syrian refugee camps in different regions of the war-ravaged country. The Russian Reconciliation Center for Syria chief Alexei Bacon says settlements in Aleppo, Latakia and Hama province were targeted. On the other side of the border, a 6-member U.S. team has arrived in Turkey to finalize a safe zone in war-ravaged northern Syria. Turkey's defense ministry says the team will set up a joint operations center that will begin its work soon. Both countries struck a deal to establish a safe zone to manage tensions between Turkey and U.S.-backed Kurdish forces on the Syrian border. Turkey's defense ministry says Ankara proposed a 30 square kilometers area as a safe zone. The ministry says the U.S. has agreed to buffer zone of only 15 kilometers and negotiations are progressing. Meanwhile, Syria has rejected the safe zone, calling it a violation of its sovereignty.
This is a dangerous precedent in international relations, that 2 countries agree on making maps and safe zones in a third country, because this is a violation of the sovereignty of the third country and an international law violation.
Washington and Ankara have been at odds over plans for northeastern Syria. Turkey says it will act militarily if the US fails to agree to a solution to safeguard its borders. Now, elsewhere in China, after a brief resumption of flights, Hong Kong International Airport has been shut down again after a fresh wave of protests. Airport officials have cancelled all remaining flights for a second day. Thousands of flights have been cancelled in the past 5 days as protests became increasingly violent. Authorities have advised travelers to reschedule as over 200 flights are still delayed. In a joint statement, Hong Kong's 7 civil aviation unions have urged protesters to stop their activities at the airport. Police have arrested 149 people accused of taking part in illegal assemblies and violence. Leader Carrie Lam has defended police actions towards young protesters during the weekend's hit-and-run demonstrations. Meanwhile, China's foreign ministry has warned US senators and congressmen against propagating lies about the protests. Meanwhile, in Libya, clashes between government troops and Khalifa Haftar's forces have resumed following a 2-day ceasefire. The humanitarian truce was brokered by the United Nations for the Muslim festival of Eid al-Adha. An official said Haftar's forces carried out airstrikes against the internationally recognized government of Libya in the outskirts of Tripoli. He said government forces also bombed the area controlled by Haftar's loyalists. Moving on, a humanitarian ship Ocean Viking has rescued another 105 migrants off the Libyan coast from an overcrowded rubber dinghy. This brings the total number of migrants rescued aboard the ship to 356. French charities SOS Mediterranean and MSF have rescued the migrants, who mostly belong to Sudan. The recent rescue is the fourth in as many days. The rescues come at a time of tensions between Italy and the other European Union states. The Italian government is continuously refusing to let migrants land on its shores unless its EU partners help take them in. Moving on, the United States says it will deny citizenship to migrants who use public benefits. Acting Director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service, Ken Cuccinelli, says those already in the country will not be able to obtain green card. The Trump administration's decision aims to deny permanent residency to migrants who receive food stamps, Medicaid, and other public welfare.
Our rule generally prevents aliens who are likely to become a public charge from coming to the United States or remaining here and getting a green card. Public charge is now defined in a way that ensures the law is meaningfully enforced and that those who are subject to it are self-sufficient.
The new policy for inadmissibility and public charge grounds will take effect in 2 months. The decision is part of Trump's administration's effort to reduce immigration. Now, moving on, 8 migrants have been brought to Malta after being stuck at sea aboard a charity ship Open Arms for 11 days. The armed forces of Malta say they evacuated the 8 people following a request for medical assistance. The migrants were transferred to the Army's P-21 vessel and disembarked at the Haywarf base in Malta. The Open Arms has been at the sea for 11 days, carrying 160 people. Italy has refused to open its ports to the rescue vessel, while Malta says it will only take 39 travelers. The Open Arms has refused Malta's offer, saying the government should take in all the rescued migrants or none at all. Now, 10 million people have been affected by Typhoon Likima, the strongest typhoon to hit China in 2019. The Ministry of Emergency Management says the storm has affected 8 Chinese provinces. 44 people have been killed by the storm in eastern China's Zhejiang province. The emergency ministry says over 52,000 houses have been destroyed and nearly 1 million hectares of crops devastated. More than 30,000 firefighters from Zhejiang, Shanghai and Shandong provinces are carrying out rescue and relief operations. Over 42 million US dollars have been allocated to help with relief work in the affected areas. Hundreds of trains and flights have been cancelled and over 1 million people evacuated. Authorities have issued a high-level warning throughout the eastern region. Meanwhile, in India, the death toll from monsoon floods has risen to over 200 as heavy rainfall continues to lash the western and southern coastal regions. Over 1 million people have already been shifted to relief camps. Authorities have deployed rescue workers and troops for relief operations. Heavy rain and landslides have also cut food supplies to the flood-hit areas. More news coming up after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now moving on with the news stories. In Kyrgyzstan, the security chief Orzbek Openbayev says former President Almazbek Atambayev was plotting to overthrow the government. Addressing a news conference in Bishkek, Openbayev said Atambayev wanted to stage a coup against President Soronbay Jeenbekov. Atambayev was detained during a raid at his complex last week, raising fears of a political turmoil in the Central Asian nation. The authorities are investigating Atambayev for violence and organizing riots in addition to 5 existing criminal cases against him. The arrest of former leader saw a massive security operation after deadly clashes erupted between his supporters and law enforcement agencies. Now in Australia, police have arrested a man for stabbing a woman to death and wounding another in central Sydney. New South Wales Police Commissioner McFarlane said the suspect was a lone actor with a history of mental health issues. He said the attacker has no known links to terror organizations, but the suspect was carrying a thumb drive containing details of mass killings in the United States and New Zealand. The 41-year-old injured woman was said to be in stable condition. Russia says the 5 scientists killed last week in a rocket explosion were developing new weapons. Russia's nuclear agency Rosatom says it will continue testing until the end of the program, despite the blast. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump says the U.S. is learning much from the missile explosion in Russia. President Trump says the U.S. has similar but more advanced technology. Trump says Russia's Skyfall explosion has people worried about the air around the facility. Rosatom says the rocket's fuel caught fire and exploded, causing a detonation on the White Sea coast outside Severodvinsk. Russia's state weather agency says radiation levels have risen 4 to 16 times in the city after the accident. The authorities have advised residents to take precautionary measures and use more iodine to reduce the effects of radiation exposure. Finally, there is hope for Ebola sufferers. Now, scientists say the disease may soon be preventable and treatable after a trial of 2 drugs showed significantly improved survival rates. The U.S. National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases says the drugs showed 90% survival rate in a breakthrough trial. The U.S. has developed the cure using antibodies harvested from Ebola survivors. Director Anthony Fauci says 2 of the drugs have shown highly effective results in treating the disease. Fauci says the drugs work by attacking the Ebola virus and antibodies and neutralizing its impact on human cells. Health officials say drugs will now be used to treat all Ebola patients in Congo, where the disease has killed over 1,800 people this year. Now, South Africa is feeling the strain from having to deal with hundreds of unidentified dead bodies. Most of the corpses are thought to be of undocumented migrants. Because the bodies cannot be linked to individual families, those families face a lifetime searching for their loved ones.
Being the most advanced economy in Africa, the country offers the promise of better lives to people across the continent. Millions of African migrants pour into the country in search for greener pastures. After migrants enter South Africa, their families remain in the dark about their whereabouts and even about their death. Mostly, this is because there is no way of identifying them.
We migrated together in 1974. I was 14 years old. Then, in 1976, I went back home, leaving Sampinya here. Since then, I didn't know whether Sampinya was alive or not.
Zimbabwe's Samson Nadu is among the few lucky ones to find his uncle after 45 years. His brother and another uncle are still missing. Most probably they are already buried as paupers along with other unidentified and unclaimed people.
Families don't know whether they are alive or dead. They may hear from friends, etc., conflicting information. And so parents will struggle with this ambiguous loss of just never knowing whether they actually are dead.
Many of the bodies that come into morgues are accident or murder victims, found with no identity or fake identities. One of the busiest mortuaries is in Johannesburg, where 1 in every 10 bodies is unidentified. Mass pauper burials are held for them with no one to mourn their passing.
An unusual treatment claiming to soothe pain and treat ailments is creating a buzz in Lithuania. The users of this therapy lie on beds over beehives. More details in this report.
In Lithuania, bee therapy is becoming popular. People believe the therapy could lower blood pressure and ease breathing difficulties. Therapists claim they use energy created by bees flapping their wings.
I feel pain in my knees. It's like it is burning. Bees, it seems, feel a human's pain, and they take this and draw the pain out from the human.
Sudrunas Yapertas runs a bee therapy center in Lithuania. He says people come for different problems.
People resort to bee therapy for various problems: back pain, joint pains, to lower blood pressure, to recover from breathing difficulties, and so on.
He says he converted to this remedy after using it to ease his own back pain.
I got into bee therapy 7 years ago when I had some problems with my back. I was interested in bee therapy centers in Ukraine, and so I tried them out for myself. It helped to relieve my back pain, so I began to recommend it to others.
This method uses bee-related products, including honey, propolis, and venom, for a myriad of different ailments.
Muslims across the world are celebrating Eid al-Adha, and Syria is no different. Eid has given Syrians a respite from the sufferings of the 8-year civil war. More in this report.
The civil war has claimed thousands of lives and forced many to migrate. But on this Eid, Syrians have put the terrors of war to one side. In the rebel-held province of Idlib, there is the chattering of children in a park. They are enjoying a seesaw, Ferris wheels and swings, ignoring the hostility in the area. Even though the war has destroyed the northwestern part of the country, there is still business activity in the area.
I got the sacrifices, sheep here on Eid al-Adha, so I can sell them in the city of Idlib. Thankfully, people are buying, even though the prices have increased.
According to reports, over 1,000 people have been killed in clashes between Russian-backed government forces and rebels since late April.
In the postmodern world, chivalrous behavior is fast becoming an endangered virtue. The flag bearers of aristocracy, the Britons, however, have found a way to keep their borderline eccentrics alive. The annual Chap Olympiad in southern England has found a unique way to celebrate gentlemanly conduct. More in this report.
It was dapper suits, vintage frocks and cucumber sandwiches all round at the Chap Olympiad, a contest with a very British twist. The extravagant event saw competitors trying to outdo each other in unconventional ways. The festival includes competitions like picnic vaulting, where contestants use walking sticks to vault over a couple taking a picnic. Challengers also try to beat each other by not spilling tea while riding a bicycle. The organisers say the idea behind the event is to test gentlemanly skills.
Umbrella jousting is our key event, and it really sort of tests the skills of a gentleman in holding a furled umbrella and a briefcase while riding a bicycle and being charged at by another chap on a bicycle with the same equipment. So it's really quite difficult, and it's all about coordination and handling of the gentlemanly skills, and there's not really much sporting involved. I mean, we really avoid any sporting tests. We're testing gentlemanly skills.
Miss Minute joining in. Will this make a difference? It looks like it might. Ladies and gentlemen, the chairs.
People taking part say the carnival helps them escape their daily mechanical routine.
Absolute buffoonery and silliness and fun and it's the British at their best, I think, you know, and it's to be able to be light-hearted and not take things too seriously, and that's what I like about it. That's what draws me to it as well, and the characters in the games, I think it's fantastic.
This year, the Chap Olympiad was postponed for a day due to extremely British windy conditions.
More news coming up after a short break. Stay tuned.
एंग्रो का हर कदम बढ़ता है पाकिस्तान की तरक्की के लिए, आपकी तरक्की के लिए, ताकि शौकत जैसे काश्तकार अपने ख्वाबों की ताबीर पा सकें, अब्दुल वहीद जैसे बासलाहियत नौजवान अपने रोशन मुस्तकबिल की तामीर कर सकें, भाफल जैसी खवातीन एक बाइज्जत जिंदगी गुजार सकें। इसलिए ताकि नवाज जैसे मछेरों और अनम जैसी लड़कियों की तरबियत की जा सके, ताकि इनके और इनके ख्वाबों के दरमियान कोई रुकावट न आए। एंग्रो, पाकिस्तान की तरक्की के लिए हम कदम।
मेरा नाम मोहम्मद असलम आज़ाद है। मैं बेसिकली शेखुपुरा के गांव गाजी मीनारा का रहने वाला हूँ। 73 में मैंने डिप्लोमा किया था। मैं बचपन से देखता था कि सारे लोग जो काम करें अगर मैंने भी करना तो मैं बाकी से मुख्तलिफ क्या हुआ। 2009 में हमने देखा कि मार्केट के अंदर एक बहुत बड़ा चेंज आने वाला, जिसमें जिस वक्त इलेक्ट्रिक कार्स का एक बोलबाला शुरू हुआ कि एक टाइम आएगा कि इलेक्ट्रिक कार जो है ना वो छा जाएंगी। हम एक ऐसी गाड़ी बना सकते हैं जो बाकियों से मुनफरद होगी। तो हमने उसके अंदर एक चीज़ एडिशन कर ली जिसको हम सोलर इलेक्ट्रिक कहते हैं। उसमें यह हुआ कि 50 किलोमीटर की हमने सेल्फ जनरेशन करने के लिए इसका पूरा डिज़ाइन किया। उस चीज़ों को सामने रखते हुए हमने 2014 में पहली गाड़ी पब्लिक के लिए लिया है। बेसिकली ये भी एक इलेक्ट्रिक कार का ही पैटर्न है, मगर इसका बाकियों से फ़र्क ये है कि इसकी जो सेल्फ चार्जिंग है वो सोलर से तकरीबन 50 किलोमीटर पर डे के लिए सेल्फ जनरेट कर लेता है। फिर इसके साथ काइनेटिक एनर्जी है, जब आप एक्सीलरेटर देते हैं तो मूवमेंट गाड़ी की होती है, जैसे एक्सीलरेटर छोड़ते हैं तो गाड़ी मूव कर रही होती है, तो वो जो मूवमेंट है ना उसको रीजनरेट करता है। गवर्नमेंट की पहली पॉजिटिव सपोर्ट रही कि जो मैं चल रहा था टेक्निकली वो अप्रूवल्स हो गई। दुनिया में कहीं भी जाऊं तो मेरे पास मिलियन या बिलियन लेना ओवरनाइट अब इशू नहीं है। नेशन के लिए करना, आप नेशन की हम इस काम के लिए ज़रूरत है।
Safiullah Gul, Indus News, Peshawar.
मेरा नाम यास्मीन फौजिया है। मेरी उम्र 15 साल है। मैं लाहौर में किराए के एक मकान में अपनी वालदा और 3 भाइयों के साथ रहती हूँ। मुझे पढ़ने का बहुत ज़्यादा शौक़ है। मैं क्लास नर्सरी से ही पोजीशन होल्डर हूँ। मेरी वालदा ने बहुत ज़्यादा मुश्किल हालात में मुझे सपोर्ट किया और मेरा भी फ़र्ज़ था कि मैं उनकी हेल्प करूँ, इसलिए मैंने उनकी हेल्प की और मैं साथ साथ पढ़ती भी गई और साथ साथ काम भी करती गई। मैं गवर्नमेंट गर्ल्स हाई स्कूल सलामतपुरा लाहौर में पढ़ती थी और मैंने मैट्रिक के इम्तिहान में लाहौर बोर्ड में 3री पोजीशन हासिल की और मैं मुस्तकबिल में लेक्चरर बनना चाहती हूँ। और मेरा गाइडिंग प्रिंसिपल यही था कि मैं बड़ों का एहतराम करती थी और आज का काम कल पर नहीं छोड़ती थी। मेरा ख्याल है कि अगर आप लोग भी यही रूल अपनाएं तो आप लोगों को कामयाब होने से कोई नहीं रोक सकता।
Now, Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson says the most important trade deal his country needs to strike is with the European Union. In an interview, Johnson said a trade agreement with the US will be tough, but it will open up business opportunities. The United States has said it will support the United Kingdom with a free trade deal after Brexit.
I want to see trade with our European neighbours, and I want to see trade with countries around the world. We've got fantastic opportunities to open that up. Actually, the US market is growing very fast for the UK, but they still ban haggis, for heaven's sake, in the United States. There are all sorts of opportunities we have to open up trade with the US, but that also goes for countries around the world. But, well, you're right, the single biggest deal that we need to do is a free trade agreement with our friends and partners over the Channel.
Meanwhile, US Security Advisor John Bolton met UK Chancellor Sajid Javid to discuss the trade deal. Bolton said Britain is first in the line for Trump administration for a trade accord. Britain is scheduled to leave the EU on October 31st. Now moving on, Japanese Trade Minister Hiroshi Seiko says Tokyo is in the dark as to why the South has downgraded their trading status. This comes after Seoul's decision to drop Japan from its fast-track trade whitelist. South Korean Trade Minister Chung Young-mo says it is hard to work closely with a country that frequently violates basic rules. South Korea stripped Japan's fast-track trade status following a diplomatic probe. It has created a new category for members who are in the world's top 4 export control agreements but violate international trade norms. Japan is the only member in this list. Earlier, Tokyo removed South Korea from a list of favored export partners. More news coming up after a short break. Stay tuned.